From making my Super Saiyan 3 wig on Halloween to making my new character for my Warped Archive series, by the way, you should check out the trailers for them on my channel, I had loads of leftover yellow fabric, and there was one thing that I've always wanted to tackle, but I never knew exactly how to do it, and that was making a Five Nights at Freddy's cosplay. Though yes, I do have several problems with the game, mainly regarding how jumbled up the story's gotten over time, and how cringy the fanbase can be at times. I do have a lot of respect for FNAF, and it's something that has been a big part of my childhood, and still something I look back on with fondness to this very day. And from my love from FNAF and animatronics and cosplay as a whole, doing a Five Nights at Freddy's cosplay was something that has always just fascinated me, but I never knew exactly when to start on this. So once I got all of this crazy amounts of yellow fabric, I sat back and thought to myself, well, why not give it a shot? Now over time I did put this idea on the back burner, but eventually I got around to doing it, and I just wanted to show how I did it. Fair warning, this isn't meant to be a game accurate or hyper realistic type of design, it's just meant to be my own interpretation, but I'll go more into that at the end of the video. But without further ado, I give you how I made Spring Bonnie's head. To give a bit more context of my big inspiration for this, here's a Spring Bonnie head that I designed using a 3D pen back in 2018. This head has always just kind of stuck in my mind and was honestly like the biggest inspiration for this project, along with two other things, the Final Nights 4 Spring Bonnie animatronic, as well as the Into the Pit design. In short, this is more or less my own interpretation of Spring Bonnie and how I would portray him and want him to look. So hence why I said at the beginning of the video, this isn't meant to be game accurate in any way. Starting out, I cut out a piece of foam to design the lower jaw portion of the animatronic. Now if you can tell by this and the miniature head that I made, the lower jaw portion was heavily inspired off of Rockstar Freddy / Lefty's jaw, seeing as that's just my favorite jaw look out of the animatronics in the games. After I designed the lower jaw portion, I cut out a piece of inch-thick foam to put on the outskirts of the jaw, just so I could give it some depth like a mouth. After the jaw itself was done, I had to cut a head-shaped hole in it so I can stick my head through it. Now for this part, I measured around my head, and then I added 2 extra inches onto it just so I could actually have some wiggle room in there. Once all the foam was cut and glued into place, I went over it with yellow and red felt to give it that nice Spring Bonnie look. Now for this part, I had to cut out a piece of red for the lower part of the mouth on the inside, while the outside was much more tedious, having to sew a lot of things in place to make it more seamless than just hot gluing it. For the red, I cut it out so it fit perfectly on the inside of the mouth, but I left the part on the back open to accommodate for a hinge design later on. As for the yellow parts, I cut out one at the bottom that was the exact size of the actual thing itself, and then I cut one strip that went entirely around it, and then for the last part I had to have it so it was the same size as the upper jaw portion. Now for this part, this is where I made the muzzle / snout area of the animatronic. Now for this part, I had to take a piece of foam that was around the same size as that lower lip portion of the bottom jaw. And then after I did that, I took hours shaving off pieces of the foam so it had a more rounded, sort of slanted shape to it. And after I got this shape, that's when I had lined it up, made sure it was okay, and I covered it in felt and gave it a little nose. Sewing this part was insanely tedious because I had to do it all by hand. Damn you, sewing machine, for not working. After making the muzzle, I made this dome thing out of bent coat hangers to go around my head. Kill me. Nothing like sitting at home at 4 in the morning watching Andy play FNAF VR. And who can forget about teeth? So for the teeth, I just took bits of white foam, made them evenly sized, covered them in white tape and glued them to the bottom. Now originally on my 3D pen head, they're actually on the top of the jaw, but I decided to put them on the bottom jaw, seeing as most Five Nights at Freddy's animatronics have teeth on the bottom jaw, despite what Funko might think. After this, I made little pins using that same coat hanger to stick the muzzle onto the frame so I kinda knew where it was and for extra stability. And after this came the test fit, just so I can kind of gauge where everything was gonna go and how everything was gonna work. I kinda had too much fun with this. Nom, 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 nom. And holy hell, when I posted this on Instagram, it became my most liked and most viewed video on my page. That's fucking crazy. After this, I put tape around the dome that I had made just so I can put fabric and other foams on top of it. Following that, I made 2 ginormous rabbit ears using blocks of foam. As for the wiry looking joint in the middle, that's made using the same coat hangers, just bent at an angle. Fun fact, this was actually another creative liberty that I took from that miniature head that I made, where on there I used miniature paper clips. After this, I made 2 little pluses for where my eyes sat, and then I added thin strips of foam around the lower parts of the face, just so it would line up with the lower jaw. Next, I cut out pieces of yellow felt and lined them up with the ears and started hot gluing them on to color the ears. Now I know earlier I said that I don't recommend hot gluing all the pieces into place, I'd recommend sewing them for more seamless seams, but truth be told, I really could not be bothered to sit here and sew all 4 of these ears. It was just going to be too tedious to do it by hand. After this, I cut circles, and I made the eyes using these clear ball pieces that I got from the Jakks-Pacific Sonic the Hedgehog toys. Now I did try and use that technique that Andy uses for her eyes when she does her cosplays, but it really didn't work out for me, so I'm probably going to have to come back and try it again later. And after I got the eye holes in and the thing that kind of resembled a head, I spent way too much time playing around with it. You're probably wondering where you are. I can tell you you're not safe. So, anyways, so to compensate for the lack of eyes, I thought that the addition of Christmas lights on the inside would be really cool, so I added some white battery-powered Christmas lights to give it that joy of creation glowing eye aesthetic, and honestly, I think it's really cool. Next, I had to cut and sew fabric to go over the top of the headpiece, and when I say this is the most annoying and tedious part, man, I hated this. And to top all that off, after I got it all patterned and done, I ran out of hot glue sticks. So you know what I did? Ever just drive to Walmart at 7 in the morning to get hot glue sticks for a Spring Bonnie cosplay. After bullshitting in Walmart for a good 45 minutes, I came back home, finished sewing everything and hot gluing everything into place for the head, and what do you know? This thing looks great to me, and I'm really proud with it. Next thing I had to do was of course add the hinges. But before that, I added in black to the other top part of the foam, and then I added a black circle on the inside so my head wouldn't bump or stick to anything. As for the actual hinges, I used light gray fabric for the hinges that I nuzzled between the black piece on the top and then right next to the red at the bottom. Then I covered up the bottom portion with a piece of yellow fabric. As for the part of it that makes the jaw move back into place, I hot glued 2 strips of elastic to the sides of it. And boom, we are finished. Now, of course, in saying that, it's not technically finished, because I do want to eventually go to the craft store and buy some yellow fabric that's in a lighter color to go around the ears, and then some around the eyes, kind of like how it is on the Into the Pit cover. Now, I really wish that I had the fabrics that I wanted for this video, because I really would have loved to have shown them all off on one thing, but unfortunately my local craft store didn't have them in stock, and I don't think that they'll have it in stock anytime soon. So if you want to see any updates of changes that I'm going to make to this, which I definitely am going to have updates for it, I would highly recommend following my Instagram, where I am going to be posting about this regularly. As I mentioned at the beginning of this video, this isn't meant to be hyper-realistic or insanely game accurate to anything. It's just meant to be kind of a modge podge of how I visioned Spring Bonnie to be. In all honesty, yeah, this cosplay has a lot of problems with it, but in short, I had a lot of fun making it, and I'm really happy with how it turned out. Though it's far from done yet, I'm still really content with where I am now, and hopefully this video can inspire anyone else to try and do something fun during quarantine. So, that's all I gotta say for this video. I'm Troublesome Junction, and I'll see you guys on the flip side.